I was looking at the state honor roll results, the policies for Wisconsin, and it looks like there's actually quite a few policies in place to help with air quality, but I'm not seeing a lot as it pertains to food allergies. Do you find that this is the case for Wisconsin?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of your question.
I was just saying how I don't see that there are that many policies that when it comes to food allergies, I'm seeing quite a bit more for air quality. Do you find that this is the case for Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, like every other state in the country now, has some policies that are, at least one policy that is protective of students who have food allergies, in that it allows, Wisconsin allows kids to come to school with their epinephrine auto injectors to help protect them if they do have an anaphylaxis attack.
Okay,
But
sure.
almost every, at this point, every school in the country has that as well. What we look for are you asking, if you're asking what we look for in terms of medication policies, because we look at three major areas, and medication and treatment policies are a big area. And that's the area that a lot of states are doing really well on. Wisconsin is probably lagging a bit related to that, and Wisconsin could pay more attention to policies that require schools to identify students who have food allergies and who have, and make sure they have emergency protocols in place as a statewide requirement.
Okay, and as far as the food itself, you know, we can have the EpiPens, the kids can administer them, but when it comes to actually allowing children to bring food into the classroom, I come from a unique position where my son went to a school that was very allergy aware. They could not bring in any foods or snacks that might contain nuts because of a peanut allergy, and you could not bring in any homemade treats. Everything had to be store-bought with labels on. And now he's attending a school that is just the opposite, where you can bring in anything you like. They encourage the homemade treats. Do you feel that there should be a policy in place in regards to bringing in different foods to the schools to prevent the allergies in the first place?
Well, when we developed the report, we came together with a number of experts in the field, including physicians and school nurses and parents and school administrators, advocates, and others, to try to get recommendations about what are the right policies that states should require for every school in the state. So we're looking for statewide policies that are not necessarily school specific, and we put together a list of 23 policy standards that relate to that, and some of them, all of them are not related to medication and treatment, but some of them are. Some are related to the indoor environments, because our report reaches into both asthma and allergy policies, what's most protective of kids in schools, and some look at awareness and access to medical personnel, such as school nurses. So the kind of policy that you're talking about on a school-to-school basis about whether kids are separated, who have peanut allergies, are separated from other kids at lunchtime, or whether they can bring in outside food and that type of thing, these are not areas that we addressed in our state honor roll report. But we understand that that might be important on a school-to-school basis, but we have not tracked that.
Okay. Well, speaking of awareness, and in a lot of cases that I've experienced, many times the parents feel because their child is not affected by allergies, they shouldn't have to be forced to use a restricted menu or need to know about any of the medications or anything like that. How can we increase awareness and empathy from both school administrators as well as parents who might have children that don't have allergies?
Well, our report covers how states are doing on the policies that we recommend. We also include in our report some information on how parents can be better advocates and how people can be better advocates. And one of the things that we strongly recommend is that people tell their story. And telling the story begins with telling the story in the classroom to the classroom teacher and telling it to the principal. One of the reasons that we think that our report is such an important tool is because I've had people come to me in the past and say, and tell me, I went to my child's principal and my child's principal said, for instance, that they could or could not, they were not going to be allowed to keep their epinephrine auto-injector with them in the classroom, and that was the school rule. And I said, well, did you tell them that the state law is otherwise? They have a right to keep it in the classroom. And a lot of times the parents will say, well, we didn't know that. So what we want to do with this report is make sure that the parents understand what is allowed and what is not allowed and what is required, and that they don't just have to take someone's word for it, and that they can be an advocate and go in and demand what they need for their child, and tell their child's story and tell their own story about what they have to go through to cope with food allergies. I know that wasn't directly, answering your direct question about that specific issue, but we do have information on our website that I think would be helpful, and our website is statehonorroll.org.
Okay, and that actually addresses one of the questions that one of my readers at the Mommy Bunch wanted to know about. They had asked about keeping life-saving medications in the office and wanted to know about keeping it in the classroom instead. So how do they go about finding these laws that state that they are able to do that?
One of the big things that we're trying to do is to just open the door so that schools have the option to make those decisions, because heretofore, because of laws that wanted to discourage drug use in the schools, the drug wars and all of that, schools literally could not keep medications unless they were specifically designated by prescription for a specific student. And even if that a different student was having an emergency, they couldn't use that medication that was right there in their hands on a different student for whom it wasn't prescribed. So this is really pretty incremental, so it's one step at a time, but just allowing the schools or requiring the schools to set policies in place, policies that might include, where the medication is going to be kept, how you're going to keep it accessible, while at the same time protecting it from being stolen or abused in some way. Those are decisions that most of the times these state laws are leaving up to the school districts. So the quickest way to that in a state that's already passed one of these laws is to get to the school district and make sure you, again, tell your story and let them know how important it is to you that even if the medication is secure, that it's accessible, because time really does count.
Okay. So is there training required for each person who is administering the medication?
That's a really important issue, and we would like to see training required to make sure that they are aware of the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis and to make sure they know what to do in an emergency. So we want to really see those emergency protocols in place in case a child is having an anaphylactic attack, and that people know what to do, and that can only be done through training. And the training should not just begin and end at the school nurse if there's a school nurse available. Obviously, it shouldn't begin and end at the school nurse because a lot of schools don't have school nurses. Most kids in this country go to school in schools that don't have school nurses available the whole time that they're in school. But the training needs to take place, and we would like to see states step up and require that training.
Okay, and then I guess my last question is, how do you feel Wisconsin is doing overall, or what can we be doing better as a state?
Well, I'll mention something that every state, Wisconsin is doing okay, but Wisconsin could do better, like every state, on making sure that there are nurses available to kids in school while they are in school. And as a formality, we recommend one nurse per 750 pupils in school. We'd like to see that as really a minimum. Schools ought to be doing better than that. And I, as a parent, would be much more comfortable knowing that my child with food allergies is going to a school where there is going to be a nurse available at all times.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica.